What's going on, college football fans? Welcome back to the First and Long College Football Show. I'm your co-host Marcus, joined as always by my co-host Mason, and the semifinals are in the books, guys, and they didn't disappoint. Well, it was some good games. I really enjoyed watching both of those games. I would consider both of those to be close games, even though one of them was a couple of possessions, margin there on the scoreboard. But we all kind of saw how that one ended and made it that way. A couple of really, really good games. We're going to overreact to that today. And we're also going to give our early preview on the national championship game between Texas and Ohio State. Buckle up. Welcome to the First and Long College Football Show. If you're new to the channel, I hope you'll consider hitting that subscribe button. And if you're not, or even if you are new, we hope you'll consider hitting that like button for us real quick and get the good word of the First and Long College Football Show out and about through the YouTube algorithm and YouTube world. As I said, that was some good games, Mason. How you doing today, buddy? We're what we would, I guess, consider here in the southeast to be snowed in, right? We're down here in the southeastern corridor of the United States, and we don't know how to deal with snow around here at all. And so, therefore, we've all used it as a pretty good excuse to get stuck at our house the last couple of days. So, you got cabin fever yet? How you doing?
Yes, absolutely. The cabin fever is running over right now. I'm ready to go trek through the snow, forage some berries that I don't necessarily need. I need to do something to get out of this house. My wife thinks I'm crazy because she could be in the house all day. She could just binge watch something. As long as we got power, she's good to go. I, on the other hand, need to get out of the house like pretty much daily. And I've been here for 2 days. So it is what it is. Dealing with the snowstorm, but we had some good football to watch the past couple of
Yeah.
days, and that has been really delightful to see because for the majority of the playoffs, the first and second rounds, we saw a lot of blowouts, and those are still fun to me in some capacity, but really the once you got to the semis, you could see the competition really ramped up, and it was really fun to watch. I think the Ohio State, even though that was a two-score game between Ohio State and Texas, that was down to the wire, right?
Oh
The
yeah.
You had the fumble, the scoop and score by Jack Sawyer to kind of end the game, so to speak, and made it look like it was worse than it was. If you didn't watch the game, I'm sure everyone on the channel did who's watching this, but it was really fun to watch. I think it went about as expected with Ohio State. We'll get into the previews here or the reaction here in a minute. But now we've got our national championship game figured out, and I'm ready to break that down with you as well, Mark. Kind of taking our first look at this game. So we'll break it down this time. Probably break it down one more time, and then maybe give like a final prediction before the game is played next Monday. We've got a while for that, but I'm anxious to break it down with you. Where do you want to start?
Let's get it kicked off here, and we'll start with the game that we saw first, right, on Thursday night, and Notre Dame, Penn State. Um, Look, this, as we said, both of these games were really, really competitive. Um, I really thought this one was going to overtime, right? I thought this one was going to make it to overtime, and we were going to decide it that way. And Drew Aller, throws a really, really bad interception there towards the end of the game. And Mason, it really plays into exactly what I had spoken about last week, or I guess it was earlier this week. Um, Drew Aller hasn't been in a lot of those moments, man, and he hasn't been in a lot of those situations where you're asking him to do something like that. And you can tell a quarterback over and over throughout their entire career that it's a cardinal sin to roll, throw back across your body across the field. But there's times whenever you're a young man that you just can't be told shit, and you have to go out there and skin your knee before you're going to actually learn that you can't do that. Everybody says you can't do it, but until you make that mistake and you feel that burn, you don't know why everybody tells you that you can't do it. And I'm not saying Drew Aller, he's played quarterback a ton, but at this level, everybody all year talked about how great Drew Aller has his development has went over the last couple of years, and I do agree with that sentiment. I think that his development has been good, and I think Andy Kotelnicki coming over and running this offense for Penn State, I think it was an overall net gain. If you look at Drew Aller's yards per attempt passing the football this year, it's right at double what it was last year. And that's great. And that's momentum. And that's going in the right direction for this offense. But it got to a point in this football game where you're putting it all on him to go out there and try to win this thing. And I don't think he's that quarterback yet, Mason. And that's exactly what I said earlier in the week. And I feel like that fact just kind of reared its ugly head in this game. Now, look, Drew Aller was going against a hell of a defense of Notre Dame. So I just want to throw that out there. I mean, Notre Dame has been a great defense all season, specifically the secondary. The run defense has been good too. Don't get me wrong, but the secondary has been ironclad all year. So you got to take it with a grain of salt. But Drew Aller, 12 of 23, 135 yards, one interception, average 5.9 yards per attempt, no touchdowns on the day. So it was just a tough situation for Drew Aller to be put in, and then he made the huge mistake. Notre Dame gets down the field. Enough about Penn State, though. I do want to say Notre Dame really impressed me the way that they moved the ball through the air in this game.
Well, can I give you my piece on Penn State before we get over to Notre Dame real quick?
Yeah.
I was really impressed, and for a large part of the game, I thought Penn State was going to win this. Right? I don't know how you felt, but it seemed like
they ran the ball great.
Yeah. And it seemed like the mistakes that Riley Leonard made, the 2 interceptions, was going to cost them the game. And it seemed like, we kind of had this thing figured out and pinned down to a T that Riley Leonard was going to get tested. His arm was going to get tested in this game by Penn State because Penn State's pass rush is phenomenal, and they were able to stop the run for the most part. Jeremiah Love did not have anything on the ground until like the fourth quarter. And it really just felt to me like the play calling from Kotelnicki was superb. And I know it didn't lead to a ton of points necessarily, but you saw some creativity. You saw them be able to target Tyler Warren and get him going in this game, which is something that some people maybe thought that, Notre Dame's defense would have an answer for that. It seemed like they really didn't. I mean, there were a couple of times where, he was covered, of course, but for the most part, he did what he wanted to in that game, and it was really impressive. I came away with more respect for Kotelnicki, who I already respected as an offensive coordinator. And I think that with Drew Aller returning, assuming he does, I haven't heard whether or not he is returning, but it seems like he would, just given where he's at. I like Penn State's trajectory for next season. I know they're losing a lot on the defensive line, and some pieces on defense. It's going to happen year in and year out when you're a team that plays as good as Penn State does on defense. You send guys to the NFL. That's what happens. But I think that the offensively, at least, the best is yet to come for Penn State, and this next year could potentially be the best offense that Penn State has had under James Franklin, particularly in the passing game. Got to replace Tyler Warren. That's going to be really tough.
Got to go get some wide receivers. Got to go get some actual.
Got to get some wide receivers. Not a single catch by a wide receiver in this game for Penn State.
Yeah.
Every pass was to a running back or tight end. They did get 3 tight ends involved, and I do really like what I saw out of Luke Reynolds as a true freshman. I think he is going to be kind of the next man up. He was a highly sought after recruit. Coming out of high school, and I do think that he will fill the shoes of Tyler Warren pretty well. But yeah, overall, I think this was an outstanding season by Penn State. I saw some people say, how did Penn State get here? And they beat nobody, like literally beat nobody to get here, which there is some truth to that in a sense. I thought that the Boise State win was pretty good for Penn State, but I understand kind of where some people's heads are at with that. But looking forward to 2025 for Penn State. I got them as a top 10 team right now in the preseason.
Yeah, yeah. I want to see obviously whatever the moves that everybody's going to make in this offseason. This is going to be a wild, wild offseason. But let's talk about Notre Dame. Um, it was them moving the ball through the air that was the part that I didn't see really coming. And look, let's be fair. Penn State has given up some yards through the air this season, and it wasn't necessarily the fact that I thought it was Penn State. They're just locked down, against whatever group of wide receivers they're playing. It wasn't ever really that scenario, but Notre Dame hasn't been in a situation this season where they've had to throw the ball to win. And sometimes you possess the ability to do it, but you don't need it and you don't do it. And we kind of saw that with Michigan last year, right? Where Michigan really didn't have to throw the ball a ton, but whenever they did, they were effective doing it. And whenever they really needed to, they were able to pull through in the clutch. That's what Notre Dame did, right? They pulled through in the clutch. Riley Leonard is exactly. I thought Marcus Freeman described him perfectly after the game. They asked, obviously talk about your quarterback and what he's done to get you here, blah blah blah, all that yada yada mess, the field speak. Um, but I thought there was a lot of truth to what Marcus Freeman said in the fact that he's just a competitor. That's what you want out of a quarterback, not a guy that's like, oh, I got 300 yards passing every game. That's great. That's fantastic, and those things do help your team win. But Riley Leonard isn't interested in that. Riley and this offense isn't interested in that. They're interested in doing whatever it takes to win. And he's just a perfect match for that personality of offense, I feel like. The play calling I thought was really good. Mike Denbrock is one of the best in the game. There is zero doubt about that. One of the best offensive coordinators in college football right now. And that's not something new to this year, guys. That's been going on now for a few years. So really, really impressed with Notre Dame and their will to win. I just have to say, and the way that they drove down the field there, that was a championship drive there at the end to get in position, right, to be able to kick that field goal, and well, especially with the iffy kicker. I mean, you couldn't just get it on the 35 and it's you're good to go. I mean, you had to get that sucker in position, centered up on the field, all that stuff. And I just got to tip my cap to Notre Dame because I think that they've coached their way. I see that Double O'Neill puts in the comment section, that's what a good coaching staff does, and I do agree with that sentiment. I feel like this has been a kind of a coaching masterclass this season in the big games for Notre Dame. They've had a great game plan every time they've stepped into a big situation, and they've been able to execute that game plan. Minus the one loss there at NIU, or against NIU, I should say. Still don't understand how NIU beat Notre Dame. That doesn't make any sense to me. That's the most college football shit I've ever seen in my life. And here we go, Notre Dame with a ton of momentum throughout the whole season, has carried it all the way to the national championship game. They win 27-24. What are your final thoughts here on Notre Dame headed into the Natty?
Excuse me. Well, first of all, there was a moment in this game. You brought up the NIU game. There was a moment after the second pick where I saw Riley Leonard on the sidelines, on the side of the field, and he had a similar look, this like anxious sort of look on his face that I saw against NIU, and I thought, oh no, this guy's seeing ghosts out here. Here we go. He's going to start throwing more interceptions or not connecting on passes, and I think that the coaching staff and Mike Denbrock did a good job of kind of coaching around that, saying, hey, our quarterback's not throwing the ball quite as accurately as we'd like. He's throwing the ball over or turned the ball over a couple of times. So let's get Jeremiah Love involved a little bit, right? Let's see if we got something in the run game here. And they did. Jeremiah Love kind of really won them this football game, I think, in the fourth quarter. He really got going there late in that game, and Penn State didn't have much of an answer. Penn State tried to answer and ended up throwing an interception. Drew Aller probably made the worst throw that he could have made in this game at the worst possible time. and that cost Penn State the football game. But looking at Notre Dame, and I do want to get to one point before I forget. When Steve Angeli came in, I the offense looked completely different, and I credit Mike Denbrock because he didn't use the same playbook. It looked like Steve Angeli had been running with the ones quite a bit leading up into this game because they knew that Riley Leonard has a propensity to get injured, and he goes out for a series, heading into halftime, and Steve Angeli comes in. He's 6 of 7 with like 40 something yards, and this offense just did not skip a beat. I was really impressed with him. I thought that this was where Notre Dame was going to start to head downhill, but I think that type of game plan or that type of game play, I should say, is it shows the resilience of this Notre Dame football team and the ability to throw an interception and then come back and score a touchdown, throw an interception and then come back and fight. Starting quarterback comes out, your backup quarterback is ready to go and leads the team down. I think they got maybe 3 points out of that. I don't remember the drives exactly. That was a couple days ago at this point, but I feel like this team is really has a strong culture, and they're really unified. They're resilient. Nothing that happens in this game against Ohio State is going to phase them. They're going to be in this game until the final whistle blows, I think. And boy, that bodes well in college football when you've got a culture like that. Guys who play together, guys who play around their quarterback. You're going to see that again with Notre Dame versus Ohio State. We'll be breaking that game down here in just a minute.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Congratulations to the Notre Dame Fighting Irish because, I mean, it's been a hell of a season. And nobody was looking at Notre Dame halfway through the season and thinking, okay, they'll be in the national championship. Now, I have to say, Riley Leonard coming over to Notre Dame definitely gave me the warm and fuzzies in the offseason. I felt like, holy crap, this is a really good matchup here. But to be able to see that all coming to fruition and them playing in a national championship game, I didn't see that coming. So I just think I think that's a big deal. And not to mention, Notre Dame has made a ton of money this playoffs. I was reading an article earlier today. They get all the conference money, right? Considering the fact that they're in an independent. So they've made like $20 million winning these games this season. So anybody that was holding their breath for Notre Dame to join a conference at some point, you're gonna suffocate because they won't be doing that. They won't be doing that anytime soon at this point. Congratulations again to Notre Dame. All right, let's transition over to the Cotton Bowl here. Ohio State 28, Texas 14. This was a really, really, really close game all the way down to the very end, Mason. And you kind of said it last week. You felt like this was kind of our de facto national championship game. You felt like whoever could come out of this game had a really, really good shot at going ahead and winning that national championship, barring some type of crazy injury or something of that sort. I look and kind of tying into what I was saying earlier this week about this game. I was impressed with Texas's ability to not have to bring the house and still control the run good enough to limit Ohio State. Now, that first drive, Ohio State goes down there and scores. They're able to run the ball a little bit. And then I felt like Texas really just kind of figured it out and really, really slowed Ohio State down and what they wanted to do. And kind of what I mean by that is we had watched Tennessee and Oregon play one-on-one against these wide receivers a ton in those two playoff games. Texas had ample men in the defensive backfield, it felt like, the whole game, right? And it made things so much tougher for Ohio State. And so you got to tip your cap to Texas. I thought they played pretty well, not to mention the fact that in the second half, they really turned up the heat on Will Howard and were able to get after him. But Ohio State is the best team in the country right now, Mason. And And it just came to fruition by the end of the game. They outlasted Texas. Ended up getting that turnover there at the end of the game, running it all the way back for a touchdown as Texas was working their way down the field. This was just a really good football game. If this game was played 10 times, I think Ohio State probably wins it 6 or 7. But I do think Texas comes away with a few wins out of those 10. So I feel like this was a pretty good matchup. Texas offense just wasn't. It hasn't been good enough this season to get it done, Mason. It wasn't good enough here to get it done. Just over 300 yards total for the game. Not what you would expect from a veteran quarterback and a Steve Sarkisian led offense. Kudos to Ohio State. Really good defense as it's been all year. The offense was good enough. 28-14, they're going to the national championship. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, starting with Texas, I thought that the defense played really well. They gave up some passing yards, gave up some chunk plays. The one touchdown at the end of the game to Trevion Henderson. I mean, 75 yards and 7 points. You take that out of the game, which I know you can't do, but Texas looks, I mean, statistically, they look like the better team on paper. It ended up being really even as far as total yards and rushing yards and things like that. But you got to be, if you're a Texas fan, you got to be kicking yourself, thinking, guys, if we block that one play, if we tackle the running back on that one play, we might have won the game, right? If that play happens and everything else remains the same, or if that play doesn't happen, I should say, at the end of the game, Texas doesn't feel like they have to go for a touchdown. They can kick a field goal. So they don't get the 7-point swing there. Even if they did, even if they went for it, being greedy, going for 7, they're still in it. They're only down a touchdown at that point. Texas is with 2.5 minutes remaining in the game. So the offensive game plan would have been completely different. I mean, you can really look at that one play and think, yeah, that if that play goes differently, if you're a Texas fan, we could have won the game. That was the defining moment in that game for Texas. I thought Quinn played pretty good. I thought he had a good game. Seemed like nothing was really phasing him. The guy took some shots too, Mark. I mean, the Ohio State defense.
I thought he was very
Yes,
calm and poised and collected.
he showed me that he's one tough son of a gun in this game. Not that I had my doubts, but you saw the one nearly first yard run that set up the fourth down where Arch Manning was able to convert the first down there and continue the drive for Texas. And he just took a lot of shots, 4 sacks in this game, including the last one, which was the scoop and score by his former roommate, Jack Sawyer. I mean, the Texas defense, though, it was on display. It showed up. It held this passing attack from Ohio State to a pretty reasonable amount of total yards, 289. Again, 75 of those came from the one throw screen pass to the running back. Outside of that, it seemed like the defense was flying all over the field. Now, and the defense set Texas up to win this football game. The winner of the game, though, to me, was the Ohio State defense. Now, you want to talk about flying around the field. I haven't seen a team do it better than Ohio State this year defensively. They're the number 1 team on defense for a reason. Caleb Downs, that transfer move to get him is an absolute difference maker, and he had some plays where he had the one tackle on Gunnar Helm, where Gunnar Helm got the personal foul, where I don't even know how he tackled the guy. He barely got a hand on his shoelaces, and somehow the 260 or 240-pound tight end goes down. But, Caleb Downs got exposed a little bit in this football game, but, man, he made some good plays too. He more than made up for it on the toss sweep that at the end of the game that ended up being a 7-yard loss, where he comes in, recognizes what's going on, is kind of running the running back down and caused him to swing it out further than he probably had to. And that ended up being the difference in the game. Realistically, you tackle them for a loss of 7 yards, and the game call the play call there completely changes the game. You had what, 4th and 1, and now you're at 4th and 8. I mean, completely different game plan at that point. But this Ohio State defense, look, senior laden. You got 10 of these 11 starters are going to go to the NFL, and the other starter that's not going to the NFL this year is Caleb Downs, and that's just because he's a true sophomore and might be the best player on the defense when it's all said and done. But 10 of these guys are going to either to the NFL or they've exhausted eligibility, and it showed. This looked like a really experienced group that knew what each other were doing, could read each other's minds, and they just played as a unit, and it was really stinking impressive. And then on the flip side, the Ohio State offense did just enough. I thought that the run game was pretty good going up against Texas. That's a tall order for any running game. But 24 rushes for 81 yards. I mean, you had to fight tooth and nail to get those yards, but there were a couple of pop plays from Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins that really just changed the outlook of the game. Got a couple of touchdowns on the ground, and ultimately, really just a solid performance by Ohio State in a game where Jeremiah Smith was completely covered up. Right, they did this without Jeremiah Smith, and I think that it's important to note that as well. But yeah, absolutely, Ohio State is the odds-on favorite. We're going to break that game down between them and Notre Dame here in just a minute, but they should be. Everybody who has eyeballs knows that Ohio State is the team to beat this year in college football, at least since the postseason started. And I think that they're in a really good position here going up against Notre Dame.
Yeah, absolutely. And Vegas thinks so too. As you said, we're going to break that one down here in just a minute. Congratulations to the Buck Nuts out there. I know that you guys are very, very excited. Three of the biggest wins in a little while here in a row, right, in succession for Ohio State. And I know the fan base is extremely excited, and you got to feel good. You got to feel good about your chances in that national championship. You just got to tip your cap to Jim Knowles, I think, and that hire was made 3 years ago now, right? And I feel like it's all come to fruition. I mean, and the defense wasn't the problem last year; that wasn't what held Ohio State back. But it's because of that defense that you're in this position again this year. I firmly believe that. And the offense's adaptability has been pretty impressive as well. Although, this is a decent Texas defense, right? This is a really good Texas defense. So you expected the offense to take a little bit of a step back in this game, and the defense just kind of picked up right where they left off and picked up that slack, and that's the reason they won the game for sure. We're gonna jump into the national championship breakdown here in just a second. Since we are on the live format, we kind of can interject and add whatever we want in here. And maybe since we got some Bucknuts in the comment section, maybe you guys can let me know what you think. But something happened this week that I just wanted to talk about on the show, and I don't want to get to the end here and forget to talk about it. So Carson Beck hits the transfer portal from the University of Georgia. And this is something that's been talked about a ton, obviously, in the state of Georgia. Mason and I both live here in the state of Georgia. So obviously that's something that's been talked about a ton. Obviously very mixed emotions on this announcement and the thought process of Carson Beck. And the reason I bring it up right now is because, Mason, the very first thing that I thought of, and I'm being dead serious, the very first thing I thought of was Carson Beck going to Ohio State and being the successor to Will Howard. That's the first thing I thought. Now I'm here in Miami, and we all know what the connections are, or maybe you don't know. I shouldn't say.
Well,
that.
he did commit to Miami yesterday.
Yeah,
so
yeah, I know. I'm just saying.
Okay. Yeah.
But my point in all this is that was my first thought, and I think he would have been an outstanding fit at Ohio State. By the way, I think he's stupid for going to Miami personally, and you know, he's going to do well, I think, in that offense. But as far as the team outlook on things, I don't know that Miami is a team that you're just like, oh, they got just as good a chance as anybody to win the Natty next year. I don't think anybody feels that way necessarily. But this is obviously a personal move, right? This was done for personal gain here. He dipped his toe into the NFL waters, was told he's not going to go where he wanted to go. He's got a girlfriend at Miami, that plays on the basketball team. And here's what I'm hoping, Mason, and maybe you have some insight. I'm not so sure that anybody knows the truth yet. Um, I'm hoping that Carson Beck came to Georgia and said, I need $3 or $4 or $5 million to stay, and Georgia told him to get the hell out of here. That's what I'm hoping happened. Because if that's not what happened, then Carson Beck can go to hell, as far as I'm concerned. And I don't mean literally, but I mean as a fan and as somebody who's watched Carson Beck come up. Unless he got a big bag to go somewhere else, screw that guy. In my
Yeah.
opinion, screw him. Now, if he was offered $4 or $5 million and Miami gave him that, you got to go. I get it. You can't stay at Georgia and make $1 million or $2 million when you can make $5 million. I own a business. Okay, I'm not a dumbass. Some may call me that on the internet, but I'm not actually one. What are your thoughts on this? And have you heard anything? I don't know. I don't.
Yeah. I think, and here's how I think it played out, and I'm almost certain it went this way, right? Carson Beck in 2024 for Georgia came back to Georgia, could have gone to the NFL, right? He had a great year in the 1 year of starting in 2023. Really could have gone to the NFL and been at least a second round draft pick. That was the grade was a first or second round draft pick after his I guess technically his fourth year of college football. He decides to come back. Why did he come back for 2024? Well, it's because Georgia paid him $3 million to come back. That's why Beck came to Georgia in 2024 to play football. He got himself a Lambo. He's making $3 million. So then he gets injured. We all saw the season. It wasn't what he expected. I thought he played really well. And look, I'm a Georgia fan. I'm not happy Beck's leaving. I think that Beck is a great quarterback. I think he did not have the weapons that he needed in this football season. And that cost him extra yards. That cost him some interceptions, things like that. Okay. But going back to the story with Beck, he's making $3 million a year, didn't have the season that he had hoped for. Georgia, right, is expecting him to go to the NFL. So they go out and get Zachariah Branch. They go out and get Noah Thomas. They go get him, or not him. They go get the new quarterback, Gunnar Stockton, some weapons in the transfer portal. Basically, I'm thinking that they're spending all the money that they were paying Beck, the $3 million that they were expecting to pay Beck. And then Beck looks at his draft grade and he says, I'm actually thinking about maybe coming back. And Georgia says, well, considering we just spent a lot of money in our transfer portal from our pool of money, we can't offer you $3 million. Like, I'm sorry, between that and the way you perform this year, we don't think you're worth $3 million, right? So Beck hits the transfer portal, goes to a place that he knows he can make $4 million, and I'm hearing that he did make over $4 million or is going to make over $4 million at Miami. That's
well, that makes me.
from like
I mean,
an
that makes me
insider
not hate him.
source. Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's what it is. If you told me, let's say I'm making $100,000 a year and I can go work this other job, this dream job of mine, I'm going to make $1 million a year, or um, maybe I don't make $1 million a year. Maybe I'm going to make $80,000 a year. I'm going to take a pay cut from where I think I'm going to be at. But I can go work another job and maybe get an opportunity next year. But I'm going to make $120,000 a year. You see what I mean? Like you would take the smart decision,
Yeah,
and also you're not gonna take a pay cut. Taking a pay cut from $3 million to $1 million is a lot, right? For those at home, you're making 60,000. Now you're making 20,000. How are you going to feel about that? it's all relative to what you make. I get $3 million is plenty of money to live on, but when your standard of living um, is that, right? $1 million seems like pennies or peanuts, whatever. So I don't fault Beck for what he's doing. As a Georgia fan, I wanted to see him another year. There are some Georgia fans who did not want Beck to come back, who are saying Gunnar Stockton's better. I don't know how you
We don't
really
know.
come to
Yeah,
that
we don't know.
conclusion in
Yeah,
6 quarters of football, but
right.
um, there's a reason he was a starter, and Gunnar wasn't, and it's not because he stuck around. I can assure you that.
Well, well, and I agree with everything you say. Now, with that being said, I don't trust Kirby Smart to play the best quarterback. So I don't necessarily agree with that part because I mean we've seen Justin Fields sit behind Jake Fromm. So I don't trust Kirby to play the best player at quarterback. I just don't. So is it possible that Gunner is better than Carson? I think it is very possible. I think it is in this offense. Now, is Gunner going to be a better pocket passer than Carson? No, probably not. Carson's got the arm, but something's off with Carson with the body language, the attitude,
I
the
don't
I'm
I
not
don't
I'm not
know,
so sure he
and
loves football. Like,
that's the question I have, and I heard Pat McAfee bring it up on his show because he kind of broke the news because he was live when the news came out that Carson Beck was transferring. So I saw his clip before anything else. I'm not a huge Pat McAfee fan for college football necessarily, but that's what he said. I mean, on ESPN, we don't know if Carson Beck loves football, right? And I think that's actually really accurate.
it when
And
when
I
Carson,
would say the same about Quinn Ewers, by the way. I think that's a
yeah,
very similar sort of comparison between Quinn and Carson Beck in a lot of ways, actually.
yeah. I mean, just when you've watched, whenever he was going through his little spell where he was throwing lots of interceptions, the body language wasn't good. It was slinging the head back on, and or putting your head down with a towel over your head in the middle of a game, and everybody else is out there fighting their ass off to try to figure out a way to win the game, and you got a towel over your head. And then, not to mention, he's got the headset in for the Georgia Notre Dame game, and he's just stone faced the whole time, and just doesn't move like a statue over there. And I don't know, man. I try not to read too much into stuff where I'm on the outside looking in, but it seemed like he was almost pissed off over there or something. Like, I don't know. It's been kind of a journey with him. He's done a great job at Georgia. I think he's probably going to do well elsewhere. Um, you know, but I agree with that sentiment. I'm not so sure how much he really loves football, and to go to the next level and do this at the NFL, you're going to have to absolutely love it. I mean, you're going to have to absolutely love the game, because if you don't, you're going to hate the game even more by the time it's all said and done. They're going to make you hate the game. The NFL
In,
is not for the faint of heart, my friend.
in the NFL, I mean, what is what do you think of Carson Beck in the NFL? Do you think he's going to be a future like 10-year starter or like a Pro Bowl guy or backup quarterback, or is he going to fizzle out in 5 years? What's your kind of thought?
Seems like a really good backup to me.
That's what I'm thinking. Like high end backup, start for half your season and you feel pretty good about it. Maybe a Nick Foles type, like leads a team that's really good around him to a Super Bowl championship or something like that. I could see that. Like I feel like he's a very high floor guy, but I don't really feel like he's a high ceiling guy. And
Yeah.
I think NFL teams are picking up on that distinction. Not to mention,
Well,
he's going to be playing in his fifth or sixth year of college football. He's pretty old coming out. Now you saw Michael Penix do that, and he's leading Atlanta to some pretty good drives and looking really good. But a lot of these NFL teams don't like to draft a player who's 24 years old. They want they want a player who's 21 or 20 and has a lot of upside. And Carson Beck, I think you're seeing pretty much his ceiling for the most part here in college football. And not to say he can't get any better, but there's a lot less meat on the bone at this point as far as progression goes.
absolutely. All right. I just wanted to talk about that. And look, we're going to talk more about transfer portal stuff here coming up. We talked about that whenever we do our official prediction for the national championship game, which will be later this week, that we were going to kind of go into a deeper breakdown on the transfer portal stuff. That was just a little bit of a taste of kind of local news for us, right? It was national news, but it was local news for us. So just wanted to kind of chit chat on that one for a minute and join us later this week as we break down in full the national championship game and also transfer portal comings and goings, and as we kind of as those pieces kind of settle down a bit. But let's do an early preview on the national championship game now. Notre Dame taking on Ohio State in Atlanta, Georgia, the Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Ohio State is an early 9.5 point favorite, as Vegas has indicated. The over/under set at 45.5. This one is going down on Monday, January 20th, 7:30 Eastern time. Ohio State has been on quite the tear, Mason. And you could say the same about Notre Dame. Obviously, to get to this point, you've got to win several playoff games in a row. And Ohio State didn't play for a conference championship, nor did Notre Dame. Obviously, Ohio State coming off that Michigan loss that absolutely just lit a fire under the Buckeyes. And ever since, they've absolutely been on a tear. Notre Dame has got a will to win, Mason, that really has been second to none this season. They've figured out ways to win football games most of the time by double digits this season. These games have gotten obviously closer. We just saw them with the 3-point win over Penn State, took advantage of a late interception from Drew Aller, drove down the field, kicked the field goal to go ahead and win that sucker, as everybody thought it was about to go to overtime more than likely. How well can Riley Leonard implement this system against what I feel like is the best defense in the country in Ohio State? That's really, I feel like, what this one boils down to. I trust that Ohio State, their offense is going to score at least 21 to 28 in this game by themselves. At least 21 to 28 points in this game by themselves. How much can the defense help? Can they get another defensive score in this game or provide some short fields for the offense? Then I see that number going up to 35 maybe, that the offense could produce themselves, if they can produce some points off of turnovers. It's all going to depend on that Notre Dame offense versus this Ohio State defense, in my opinion. Notre Dame been a run-first football team, but we saw them last week against Penn State really be able to throw the football around a little bit whenever they needed to do it, and that was something that we hadn't seen from them a ton this season. So if Notre Dame can duplicate that, they're going to have to do it against, again, I'll say it again, the best defense in the country. Then I think Notre Dame has got a chance to be in this football game. But that's easier said than done. Riley Leonard is not exactly a polished passer, my friend. He'll hit a touch pass every once in a while whenever they get you all down by, to the line of scrimmage, because they want to run the football. And then every once in a while they'll hit you with Great House or Mitch Evans or Faison. They do have a few little options there in the passing game that they've went to and have done it successfully in high pressure situations most recently. They're going to have to do that on an extreme level, I feel like, in this game to be able to close up this 9.5 point spread here and possibly win a national championship. What are your early thoughts on this game? We're going to go into more depth later this week. We're going to have all our stats and all our final predictions. We just want to kind of get our grasp on our thoughts on this one, kind of going into it and get our thoughts in order here just the day after Ohio State took down Texas. What are your thoughts on this one going in, Mason?
Well, this is another defensive game, and that's become a common trend here as we get further into the playoffs. These teams are defensive-led football teams, and once again, you've got the number one defense in Notre Dame, or excuse me, in Ohio State. They're number one in the country in score defense. Guess who's number two in the country, though, Mark? Notre Dame. They're number two in the country in score defense. And actually, when you look at the offenses, points per game at least is kind of what I'm looking at here. Ohio State's offense ranks 11th in the country at 35.8 points per game, and Notre Dame's ranks 4th in the country at 37 points per game. So they are almost giving up as few points on defense and scoring more points on offense. Now, do they have the same schedule? Obviously not. But I do think that that's worth pointing out. You look at how these defenses are built, and Ohio State's really good at stopping the run. They're 5th in the country in rushing yards, and they're even better at stopping the pass. They're 1st in the country when it comes to that. Obviously, Notre Dame, they want to run the ball first, right? We saw Riley Leonard this past week against Penn State. He was forced to throw the football because they really weren't getting much out of the run game going up against Penn State's defense. And by the way, the defensive line is getting even harder when you look at what Ohio State has been doing as of late. So you've got a tougher test. You already showed us that you couldn't really run on Penn State. Now you got to go do it against Ohio State. I think that that's going to be really, really tough for them unless Riley Leonard is able to connect in the passing game, which he did connect a few times with some players in the Penn State game, but also had the 2 interceptions. You throw 2 interceptions against Ohio State with the way that Ohio State's playing right now, you're not winning that football game. I'm sorry. If Notre Dame has a chance at winning this football game, they better play perfect on offense. Defensively, I feel pretty good about the defense going up against Ohio State, but if you don't slow number 4 down, you're not going to have a chance. If you're the Notre Dame defense, stop Jeremiah Smith. That's what Texas did, right? And Texas's defense gave the Longhorns a chance to win that football game. Now they didn't do it, but we all saw the game. We all saw that it was really close up until the very end, and Texas really in the second half of that game looked like their offense was winning against the defense up until the scoop and score from Jack Sawyer. So to me, that's the big question. If Notre Dame, obviously, they're the underdogs for a reason. I think Ohio State is really good. I think that Ohio State probably wins this football game 7 or 8 times out of 10 with the way that they're playing football right now. But the chance that Notre Dame has, even though it's a small chance, I think it gets even better if you're telling me that they win the turnover battle, they win on the ground and have more rushing yards on the ground than Ohio State does. And if you're telling me that Jeremiah Smith is held to less than 50 yards, like that's the recipe for success to me for Notre Dame in this football game. It's going to be tough, though. I said going into the semifinals that if Texas beats Ohio State, and I said that Texas would have a better chance to beat Ohio State than Notre Dame does, just based off the matchups, then if Texas beats Ohio State, then Texas could lose to Notre Dame. If Ohio State beat Texas, I said I don't really see Ohio State losing to Notre Dame, right? Just based off of matchups. I think that Texas would have been a much better matchup for Notre Dame, given what Texas is, as far as, in my opinion, I think they're a little bit less of a physical team than Ohio State, a little bit more finesse, a little bit more on the back end of the defense, which I think would bode well for Notre Dame and their offense, and as far as the matchup goes. But now that you've got Ohio State, I really feel like Ohio State is playing at a different level than everyone else in college football at this point in the season, which now obviously you've only got one other team, but this is like the Death Star version of Ohio State and we haven't seen a team dominate quite like they have here on the home stretch. We haven't seen a team do that all season long. We've been waiting on that bona fide number 1 team all season long. Ohio State's doing it at the right time. I think that they're favorites for a reason. As far as the line goes, I'm not ready to touch that quite yet, but I do think that Ohio State wins this football game. They look unbeatable right now, Mark. I don't know that I've seen a more dominant team since maybe 2020 Alabama, I would say, as far as just how they're playing right now in the playoffs. It's really impressive, and they're doing it in a season where they're playing 17 games, I guess 16 because they didn't play for the championship for the Big Ten. So I think they're in Death Star mode right now, Mark. I'd be really surprised if Ohio State loses this football game. But like I said, Notre Dame has some opportunities. They've got to capitalize early. They've got to get the run game established early, set up the pass game, or vice versa. However, Mike Denbrock wants to play that. I think that they've got a better coaching staff in some aspects, and maybe I shouldn't say that. Ohio State's coaching staff is really good as well, but you are going to see some really good coaching in this game on both sides of the football. Really like Jim Knowles, really like Chip Kelly, like I like Al Golden, and Mike Denbrock for Notre Dame. I think this is going to be a really well called game, but it's players, not plays, right, Mark? So to me, I think that Ohio State's got a little bit more horses in the stable right now than Notre Dame. I think that they have a little bit more of a capable wide receiving room that's going to show up in this game. And I just feel that I'm only going to give Notre Dame like a 25% chance of winning this football game, considering all of that.
I agree with a lot of what you said there. I like the Notre Dame defense to hang in there, and at least as long as the offense for Notre Dame is sustaining some type of drives. That doesn't always necessarily mean scoring a bunch of points, but you got to get first downs and give your defense a rest. I think that is a big deal, and that ties right into what you said. Notre Dame's got to come out and start fast. They can't wait till the second half to get things going, because we haven't seen Notre Dame really get behind, right, a whole heck of a lot, really throughout the whole season. And I think it's imperative that that continues if they want to be successful in this national championship game. Don't think you can get too far behind with the type of offense that this team plays, and especially whenever you're playing a defense as good as Ohio State's, which you've covered in detail there. I mean, it is one of the best in the country. So, yeah, I think a lot of pressure falls on the quarterback position for Notre Dame, as it always does in just about every game. But Riley Leonard's going to have the game of his life. And it's going to require everybody getting involved, just like they did in the Penn State game. I don't see Notre Dame running for a bunch of yards in this game. You're going to have to be happy with 3 and 4 yard gains, I think, and you're going to have to grind it out that way. And Notre Dame's more than happy to do that, but you're going to have to hit a pop play over the top a couple of times in this game, like you did against Penn State, to be able to beat the almighty Buckeyes. We're going to break this one down in further detail later this week. Obviously, both feeling pretty good about Ohio State and their chances of winning this thing. We'll talk more about who we think is going to cover this spread, the over under. Right now, I'm kind of leaning to the under. I think, with it sitting at 45.5, but we'll talk more about that later this week. Come and join us here on the First and Long College Football Show for that. And all of you in the comment section, I certainly do appreciate you guys tagging along and hanging out with us tonight. Irish Gordian Knot. I said tonight, it's afternoon time here, but we're used to being at night. Irish Gordian Knot, thanks for tuning in. Ghoster, thank you for trolling everyone. As always, Double O, appreciate you coming and hanging out with us. Big Bucks fan. Shout out to all you guys. Anybody that I may have missed there. As well. I appreciate you guys coming and hanging out. Glenn Coward, thank you so much. Rot. Y'all all have an awesome day. We're going to be on later this week. Big Bucks fan, he must be listening from behind a little bit. He said, Big Bucks fan, we the fans absolutely didn't want Beck. Beck would have done really well for Ohio State. I'm just here to tell you, with those wide receivers and a good offensive line in front of him, he would have absolutely tore it up. Carson Beck might be a little underrated in everyone's eyes. Let's don't get going back down that rabbit hole. We're going to talk more about the transfer portal along with the national championship game later this week. I hope to see all y'all there. If you haven't done it, hit that subscribe button. Hit the like button for us on the way out real quick. It's that little thumbs up. Totally free. And I 100% guarantee it. Thank y'all so much for watching. I do appreciate it, and we're going to see y'all soon. If I can end the stream.